Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talking Business with me, Danny Pardo. On this episode, I'm talking business with Colin. And Colin runs Human Everything, an organisation that you're going to hear about during the course of this podcast. And we'll also be talking about Colin's career journey, how he started in a very different area to what he's doing right now. And it's a fascinating story. I hope you get a lot out of it, and I hope you're quite inspired as well with regards to the organisation that he runs now and the impact that he's having on the community. So, without further ado, let's go. Let's talk business with Colin. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talking Business with me, Danny Pardo. We've got Colin here today. Hello, Colin. How are you doing?
Hi, Danny. I'm very good, thanks.
Super. Well, thank you very much for joining me. Really appreciate it. Now, we met through the Hereford and Worcestershire Chambers of Commerce in our careers that we have now. But I'm going to get straight into you. Before we get stuck into your career and what you do and how you help the local community with your organisation, I guess we need to find out, who is Colin?
Okay, that's a good question. So I'm a mental health first aid instructor with a background in engineering. So there's some sort of paradox there between logic and emotion. But we'll get into that in a bit more detail later on. I'm based in Kidderminster, but you might be able to tell from my accent, I'm not from around these parts. So I'm from Scotland originally. I was born in Paisley, which is just outside Glasgow, but I've been in the West Midlands now for I think about 15 years. I only meant to be here for about 2 years for the job, and then I'm still here.
But that's for West Midlands and Kidderminster for you.
It is. It's a good place to be. And what do I do outside of work? Running is one of my main hobbies. I'm a regular at Parkrun in the Wyre Forest. And so is my partner Lucy. And we've got a cat as well. That's vaguely interesting. He's orange and he's got an attitude problem.
Well, he's a cat, so that kind of goes without saying. I have three, so we'll have to do a cat podcast or something the other day and just compare our cats or something. But unfortunately, Colin, we've got to stay on you. You know what I mean? We can't get too much into the cats as much as we might love to. And you took me out of it a bit there when you said, okay, well, I did engineering, and now I'm a mental health kind of specialist and first aider and training people for that. So I'm kind of curious, how do we go from engineering, Scotland, Kidderminster, mental health? How does that all start? So take us back to kind of when you're GCSE, kind of 16, 17 years old. Do you have the belief that, in a couple of years, I'm going to be living 400 or 500 miles away and I'm going to run my own mental health training business?
Well, so thinking back to when I was a teenager, that was last century, which is a little bit depressing. But I was always interested in the sciences, technical things. I'm very logic orientated. I like facts, like figures. I love a graph. That's one of my favorite things in the world. But I studied engineering at university. I did something called product design engineering. And then when I left university, I discovered that although I'd got this degree, it didn't guarantee me a job anywhere. And I ended up working in a bookshop locally in Glasgow. I ended up in a retail shop selling ladies' clothes, of all things. And I spent about a year after university trying to find an engineering job. And the first one that presented me with an opportunity was based in the Midlands. And so I travelled down for the interview, and fortunately I got the job. So I moved 350 miles away from my family to start my engineering career. And I started with designing kettles and toasters. Basically anything you could plug in and it sits in your worktop in your kitchen. Like we were designing that. We designed it in the UK, but it got manufactured in China. So I've spent a lot of time traveling over to China to work firsthand with the factories. I did that for quite a few years. And then I changed jobs and started designing floor care appliances like vacuum cleaners, carpet washers, steamers, these kind of things. Again, it was all made in China. So I spent a lot of time over there again. And then the last engineering role I had was based in Worcester. And I was designing locks, latches, hinges, various little mechanisms. And that involved traveling the other way around the world and ended up in America quite a few times. So I got to travel around a lot, see the world, and that was fantastic. But during the pandemic, it made me realize that my own personal values and the company I was working for, their corporate values, there was a misalignment, and I started thinking about doing something else. And during the pandemic, I did the mental health first aid course. And I realized with hindsight through my engineering career that I'd seen colleagues experiencing mental health issues and management either not knowing how to deal with it or just trying to ignore it, maybe. I don't think it was malicious. It was just I don't think people had the skills or the confidence to address the issues. And I was there as well. I didn't even realize there were issues until I was given these skills sort of a couple of years ago. And with my partner, Lucy, we set up Human Everything. We realized there was an opportunity to help people. Lucy's got a background in HR, so she's very au fait with that side of things. And I sort of bring the cold, hard logic to the party, as it were. But as soon as I could, I became qualified to instruct the mental health first aid courses. So that course that had inspired me, I'm now qualified to teach. And it's really inspiring in many ways to see people have that light bulb moment like I had to go, oh, hang on, this is actually really important. And I know people that may be experiencing issues. In the last course I delivered, there was someone on there going, suddenly realized you could see him click. And he went, I think my next door neighbor might be having some serious issues. I'm going to go and speak to him this evening as soon as we finish this course. And then the next day we're on the course, he was like, you know what? I'm so glad that I spoke to my neighbour because I think I've really helped him now. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, I mean, what an impact you've had there, and what a change of pace from a globe-trekking engineer working for businesses and liaising with people on a global scale to running a business like this. And that's obviously a big risk there. As we start to get into this change of career for you, then let's just briefly want to ask you about your international travel. Is it as glamorous as people think that you get to travel for work? Are you in first class all the way? You're getting driven from airports and treated by royalty, or are you missing home a little bit? What's the life of an international traveling employee?
So to some extremes, I've had it where I've been limo driven to the airport, been upgraded to business class, had that glass of champagne as soon as you get on the flight. So this is the life. Get to the hotel, you're in like a 4 or 5 star hotel. They upgrade you to the suite, and you're like, this is awesome. That's all happened about once out of 15 years. I got upgraded once. The rest of the time, you're in what I'd refer to as cargo class. I mean, I'm over 6 foot, and there's no leg room.
Yeah, I know it well. Been there, done it, and same.
You spend long times waiting for things. You're waiting for the taxi. You're waiting for the airplane. You're in China. You don't speak the language. You're in an industrial area. It's got no tourists. You're the only Westerner. I don't speak Chinese. I tried to learn. I just couldn't get my head around it. You put in a taxi by the well-meaning sort of representatives of the factory. The taxi driver doesn't speak English. I have got no idea if he's taking me to my hotel. I don't know. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of long hours. I mean, you're doing longer than your 9 to 5 on the other side of the world. You're finishing your working day as all your colleagues in this country are waking up. So you're then on the phone to them, answering emails. And so you're working at long hours into the night. You're jet lagged, you can't sleep. And then you're at it all again the next day. And it's tough. It's exciting as a young engineer, but as you get older, it gets a bit more, let's say, difficult to recover.
But the longevity and the kind of a gradual wear and tear on you mentally and physically would I imagine add up quite a bit. So you go from that lifestyle to starting and running your own business and all the risks and challenges and things associated with that, and throw in the risks and challenges that you set this up during the pandemic. Is that right? Towards the start of it? Am I right in remembering that?
Absolutely. So we started setting up towards the end of 2020 when we're sort of deep in the pandemic, because running a business isn't difficult enough without adding in the complexity of that. But being an engineer, I did a lot of sort of risk assessments. I worked out the finances. I worked out all the process and the steps that would need to be taken to run a business, and sort of made an educated guess, I would say, as to whether or not it was worth the risk. There's always going to be risk involved. I was fortunate enough to have the savings to run the business for the first year, because running a business, it's pretty much not guaranteed, but very likely that you'll make a loss in your first year. Hopefully you'll break even in your second year, and then in third year, you start looking to make profits. So it is a big risk. But what we're doing is so important that I think it's absolutely worthwhile taking that risk.
Are you feeling then because obviously the organisation that you run now, Human Everything, fits your passions and your interests. So does it fit into that cliche of find a job you'll love and you'll never work a day in your life, and that way of thinking that you actually enjoy and you're really kind of getting off on helping people?
It does and it doesn't. So there's parts of my job or my business that I absolutely love. I love delivering the training. I love seeing the difference that it can make to people. I love going out networking, meeting people like yourself, meeting all these other interesting people from the Chamber of Commerce. I do enjoy spreadsheets, but I don't particularly enjoy doing the accounts. That's rubbish, to be honest.
I thought you said you like graphs and things. Have you changed your mind now? Have you evolved? Or?
I spend more time fiddling with not fiddling the numbers, but making graphs with the numbers rather than actually looking at the important sort of details of the numbers. There's bits of the work of the business that need doing. They don't particularly thrill me. They don't fill me with energy, but we've still got to do them to make the business run. It's not all fun, unfortunately.
That's a really honest take, and thank you for that. It's great to hear that running a business can be challenging. It can be thoroughly enjoyable, but like almost any job, there's always going to be things that maybe don't fall into those categories. So mental health, then, obviously, it's talked about a lot more. I feel it's talked about a lot more now than it was, say, 18 months or coming up to 2 years ago, really. And having worked in education myself, it's certainly more prevalent, and still being in education, it's certainly still there at the top of the agenda. Have you seen or have you felt a shift that was it not talked about before? Was it not as serious before? How have you seen kind of businesses adapt to it since the first few days of starting your business to where we are now, where things are normal? I'll throw up the air quotes on that one. Has the kind of opinions of mental health changed? Have you seen that happen?
I think there's been a shift that's much more in people's focus. So there were people who just weren't interested in it before, possibly weren't aware of it. I mean, the manufacturing sector is a classic example of that. They don't take an active interest in that sort of thing. They're much more facts and figures and task orientated and less interested in the individuals and the people. There's certain people that and companies such as the charity sector is very switched on when it comes to well-being. And I think they always have been, but that's probably a reflection of the people that are in that industry. And things like the medical industry are also very switched on with that. I think a lot of it as well is to do with the generations that are sort of running each sector, as it were. So when you look at the baby boomers who are sort of maybe born around the 1950s, people of sort of my parents' generation. So when you talk to them about mental health, they're like, well, we didn't have mental health in our day. What's this all about? And they don't. It's not that they don't get it. It's just they don't have the same structure of values that surround it. But when you look at the millennials and Generation Z that are coming around now, they're much more aware of themselves as an individual and how they fit into society and the community around them. And your mental health and well-being are a key factor in that.
Does it run the risk? Thinking of another question that I had here for you, of it becoming a buzzword and a tick box exercise rather than something that's really purposeful and powerful? Is well-being, from your experience, is it starting to be seen as a buzzword that businesses are going to say, oh, we're going to do some well-being? just because they have to, rather than they actually want to. Do you see that happening, or am I being a bit too negative on that one?
No, I think your cynicism is justified there. It's everyone's talking about it. So if a business isn't talking about it, there's an element of keeping up with the Joneses. So it's like, well, we better talk about it as well, but we don't really know what we're talking about. And so a lot of businesses are being seen to talk about it, but yet they're not actually doing anything in the background. They're not actually investing in it. So it very much can be a buzzword. And there's some businesses, I think, just still don't quite see how important it is, how the fact it will give them the ability to become more productive, to retain staff, and actually increase their profits if they take it seriously and invest in their people and their people's well-being. So there is a risk that it does become a tick box exercise, that people don't really follow through on the necessity of it.
Yeah, and it's become a massive recruitment proposal, and a very attractive recruitment idea. I know, looking at job adverts and things, you see it a lot more, that we care for our employees' well-being and mental health. And a few years ago, I never remembered seeing it so, at the top of the job description as being so important, and working from home and all the changes with flexible working and things like that. So, I mean, what do you do for businesses then in terms of human everything, so that it doesn't become a tick box exercise? What are you providing as part of your organisation to the local community and further afield with human everything?
So what we seek to do is to give businesses the skills and the confidence to have productive conversations. And we've got 4 sort of main elements. One of them is the mental health, first aid and awareness training. We've got conflict resolution and workplace mediation. We do personality profiling, and then we do bespoke workshops around company culture and values. And it's these 4 elements that are all about possibly addressing slightly awkward conversations, and whether those conversations are about people's mental health and possibly experiencing mental ill health. We're really looking to empower the businesses, empower the people to look after themselves in many ways, and to understand, when we talk about company values and culture, it's about really understanding what's valued by the people within the business, and the values they hold will drive the culture of that company. So if the people truly believe in well-being, that will drive a culture of well-being in that business, rather than just having the values as something that you just write on the wall and forget about. We seek to work with the businesses to come up with an agreed way of working, so that they're understanding their values, and they're understanding what that looks like on a day-to-day basis, how they live those values.
And in terms of living those values then, and getting your message as far and wide as you possibly can, and something that you're passionate about, I guess the traditional model would have been that you only serve Kidderminster, the Wye Forest, Worcestershire, bit of West Midlands, maybe heading to Wales here and there. Are you quite local with what you do, or is an organisation like yours with flexible working and things now are you on a national level, an international level? Where are your customers, so to speak?
So we try to focus on the West Midlands, because we feel although everything we've done online, we do prefer to work face to face. We feel there's a better human connection. So we do, where possible, face to face, but like I say, everything can be done online. So we don't limit ourselves. So if somebody inquires from Leicester or Nottingham or Glasgow, Inverness, we'll speak to them. We'll see what we can do to help. We haven't had any international inquiries just yet, but if we do, we won't turn them down.
Yeah, go back to your days of travelling, maybe. But going back then to more you as an entrepreneur, then what you do, and you're fortunate enough to make a living from it as well, and you as an entrepreneur then setting up your own business, because we see a lot of it on television. We see a lot of the Dragon's Den, the Apprentice show, and all these kind of things where people have these ideas and they get funding and things like that. For you as a small business owner, What's life like for you? Do you have a normal day? Do you get to, if I run my own business, I'm going to choose my own hours and I'm going to lie in and I'm going to have 4 days a week off. What's the reality? Is it like that? I mean, if it is, I'll probably set my own one up, but is it like that?
It's, to be a little bit vague, it is and it isn't. It's a big change in mindset from working 9 to 5 for a corporation. It's a case of working. People talk about a work-life balance. So we made a conscious decision before we started the business to understand what success looked like for us. Now, I'd love to be making £1 million a year. That'd be great. But if I'm working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to achieve that, I've not been successful. So we've got a very clear financial goal in mind, but also the fact that we want to be out running when it's the sun shining. We want to be able to go and see our elderly parents as and when required. And it's about what we call it a work-life blend, because it's every day is different. We try to sort of start work about 8 in the morning. Sometimes we start at 7, sometimes it's 6. It's not unusual for us to be getting up at 5 and then we're still working into the evening. But it's one of those things that because we enjoy what we're doing, it doesn't feel like work. And there is a risk that you can end up working all the hours God sends and burn yourself out. So it's almost you have to schedule in time for things that aren't work. So my calendar has work meetings scheduled in, but also go to the gym at this point in time. But I used to be a creature of habit and routine, whereas I could say, well, at specific times of the day, this is what I'm doing. But now it's not like that. Now you're juggling stuff a lot and it can be difficult. It's sometimes you have to sacrifice things because a customer needs to speak to you at a certain time. So it's tricky. It's quite often not glamorous. It's challenging, but it's rewarding as well at the same time. So it's a mix. It's a real mixed bag.
And that's what's nice to hear. But it is rewarding for you, and you are to a certain extent have been able to make that decision that yes, you're going to set up a business that allows you to do the things you enjoy, because work-life balance again is talked about a lot, isn't it? And there's a lot being wrote about it and spoke about it. So it's really nice to hear that you're managing to do that. What are the biggest challenges for you as a small business at the moment? Is it the lack of uncertainty? Is it businesses are spending money elsewhere? Is it your geographic location? I mean, what's the biggest challenges for you in Human Everything at the moment?
For us, the biggest challenge is probably converting initial conversations with potential clients into sales. People are always happy to talk to us, because like we've mentioned, the subject that we're helping people with is on trend at the minute. And so people always want to know more about mental health and how they can support their employees. But when we start talking, say, well, if you want us to come and do a workshop, it's going to cost you X hundreds of pounds. And then they start backpedaling, but maybe we'll stop this conversation now. And that's been a big challenge for me to learn how to manage sales and marketing. And that was something that I realize now that I knew nothing about when I started the business. I thought I knew it, and that's been a steep learning curve. And I think that's going to be a constant challenge, because although we have a customer one day, they might not buy anything from us the next. So the income isn't guaranteed, and it's a constant, I don't want to say struggle, but it's a constant challenge to be to find new people to talk to who might be your potential clients, and then trying to convert them into sales.
You're a great demonstration there as well of a small business owner, you and your partner, that you've got to do everything. That okay, you've got the know-how to run the finances. You can obviously talk to people. You know your subject very well. Oh, you've also got to be a marketeer. and you've also got to be a salesperson, and you've got to develop those skills. I guess whether you like it or not, but that's something that you've got to do. So, do you see yourself ever reaching the pinnacle of that, or are you always on a I can always do this a little bit better kind of learning curve with all of those things in terms of running your business?
I think one of my defaults in life is that I can always improve. Like, learning and development is one of my sort of key motivators. So I always feel that I can always develop further. But I've got a little mantra, which is progress, not perfection, because I'll never be perfect, but I can keep just chipping away at things and just, taking a little step forward each day and just trying to reach perfection. If I aim for perfection from the word go, I'll end up procrastinating and not taking any action. So I think it's always just better, just a little bit at a time, just keep making progress.
Yeah, and you obviously are, because Human Everything is still going and getting more successful. So let's talk about the future a little bit then, shall we, Colin? What's next for you and Human Everything these next, say, few months, as businesses maybe do return to the office a little bit more, or things become like they used to be, or the next 6 months or 12 months, or do you have a 5-year plan? I mean, what's the future for you in Human Everything?
I think the future is really just to continue growing in terms of our customer base. So the future in the short term is a lot of networking, a lot of events, a lot of going to exhibitions to visit, but also to exhibit at exhibitions, which is another whole set of skills that we're going to have to learn because we've not done that before. So it's going to be constantly improving ourselves, a lot of self-development, a lot of exploring new opportunities with existing customers, finding those new customers. We're also looking to partner with potentially with the School of NewChem, which is sort of neurochemistry, which is going to help us explain why the chemistry in your brain makes you behave the way you do, and that's got a whole lot of links with well-being. And then there's also a lot of charity work that we do. So we do a lot of work for Kemp Hospice, based in Kidderminster. So, I mean, I jumped out of an aeroplane last year to raise money for them. So we're looking at what we can do to support them this year as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's great that you really are touching so many levels there. You would think, I mean, the generic view would be, oh, you just go to places and tell them to buy your training materials or your training sessions, but the fact that you're getting stuck into the local community and linking up with really purposeful schools and education providers there is really credit to what you're doing. So before I ask you my final question, I wanted to ask you one more question. So how do we find out more about Human Everything? And to anybody listening or watching, this is not a paid promotion. This is nothing that Colin has slipped me a $5 or a $10 or maybe a cup of coffee one day. So this has not been a paid episode or anything. It's just me and Colin. We're introduced through our contact, Annie at the Chamber of Commerce, and I just really love what you do for the local community. So how do we find out more about Human Everything? Where do we go? What do we search for?
So the best thing to do is have a look at our website, which is www.humaneverything.co.uk, or you can drop me a line at colin@humaneverything.co.uk. Or you can find me on LinkedIn as well, and I'd be happy to connect with anybody and just continue the conversations.
Marvelous. I'll put all those links in the description so you can find them really easily as well. So the last question, Colin, that I haven't prepped you for is going to be about you and when you're a bit younger than you are now. I'm not going to give exact years or decades, but it was a last century question. So if we go back to when you were, say, 17, 18 years old and you're making those big decisions, if you could have been given a bit of advice, or if you wish you could go back and give yourself the advice that you wish you could take on as a bit of I know you've got your mantra that you've got now, what do you wish somebody had told you at 17 or 18 that you'd kind of listened to and stuck with? Is there anything?
I think have the courage of your convictions. I think I used to look at other people who I aspired to, thinking they had it all sorted. They knew what they were doing. But now I'm a bit older. I realise that everyone's just making it up as they go along. And just have that, have confidence in yourself. Like, it's okay to fail. Try it. If it doesn't work, you can try something else. As long as you're not, hurting yourself or anybody else, I think just give anything a go. Just have confidence in yourself.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, and I completely agree. And I guess that I can put that on the list of my things that I wish somebody had told me as well. Yeah, but it is okay to fail and try things and see how they turn out. And yes, we're a lot of us are just making it up as we go along and seeing what comes next. And I'm happy to admit that maybe I'm doing a little bit of that as well. So, but hey, it seems to be working for us all. So let's keep doing that. And Colin, let's stay on the line for a second or two as we kind of wrap this up and we say a goodbye to you. But I will say thank you very much for talking business. Really do appreciate it. And thanks for your honesty and openness. And I will no doubt see you soon.
Thank you.
Colin, thank you very much for sharing your story. It's been a pleasure getting to know you over the course of these last few weeks. And it's great to really dig deep on this podcast as well and find out what's making you tick and how successful Human Everything is becoming and how important it is to businesses that they focus on their mental health and well-being of their staff, something I'm very passionate about as well. So Colin, thanks very much, really appreciate it. And to everybody else, thank you so much for liking, sharing, subscribing, rating, reviewing, watching, listening and spreading the good word about Talking Business with Danny Pardo. I really do appreciate you doing all those things, and be sure to say hello on any of the social media channels. It'd be great to hear from you. But until next time on the next episode of Talking Business, I'll just say thank you and a cheerio.